Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast. They can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it, Spotify. If you're looking for it, you'll find us. And I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my guest today, and he is Daniel Sandoval. And welcome aboard, Daniel. You can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. So
Thank you, Blaine.
that's Daniel. And I should
Thank you,
mention
Blaine.
that by day, I can't believe this guy, he works full-time as an electrical engineer, but he loves to indulge his artistic side as an actor in local community theater. He's recently been cast in two upcoming shows at Asheville Community Theatre, Our Town and Elf the Musical. But that's just touching the surface, because as we were talking about, Daniel, off the air, not only are you in these two shows, we're going to be involved in a fundraiser, which we'll talk about, for one of the local actors. You're also in other plays at Magnetic Theater, two one-act plays. And the question I have, do you have a pair of roller skates that you get from one place to another? How do you do it?
Well, I think I better get one. I mean, fortunately, I live in West Asheville Estates, so I mean, it's maximum 10 minutes to any of the theaters, which is wonderful because a lot of people live quite
Right.
further away than that. And people I know do shows up at Parkway Playhouse and Hendersonville, and they're lovely, lovely venues. But man, it would really be a hardship to do that much driving with everything else that I need to do.
Well, the other thing also with everything else you do, I take it you don't get much sleep? I mean, I don't know how you
I
do it.
try. I
Yeah.
try. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
well, what's amazing too, Daniel, and talk a little bit about this, that at one time now, you're kind of involved in, we were counting it off the air, like four separate productions or four separate things. Does that ever get confusing for you?
No, 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 it doesn't. The thing that gets the most confusing is keeping my rehearsal schedule straight. That's the worst of it. Making sure I don't run into other conflicts with other things that are going on.
How about multiple parts? Do you have that? Is that hard for you?
No, no, it's not.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have enough time alone with each production that I can fully concentrate on it. I am doing a little bit of overlap, but right now, because we're going to our town is going to go up on the 30th. That's a week from Friday, and so even though the rehearsals for Elf began, I made arrangements ahead of time. I mean, as soon as Jeff cast me in Elf, I told him, "Hey, look, I am doing our town, and this is going to overlap, and so he told me not to worry about it. So the kind of part that I have in Elf is going to make it easy to do.
As a
And
kid, as a kid, you grew up where?
I grew up in Farmingdale,
Oh,
which
okay.
is a little town on Long Island, not in Long Island, on Long Island is what we say here, in the state of New York. Basically, it's a metropolitan New York City suburb. It's about a little less than an hour from Manhattan.
And I'll tell you in a second why I asked, but I think I've told you
Hmm.
I also grew up on Long Island, not too far away
Hmm.
from Freeport.
Oh, right. Okay.
I knew Farmingdale pretty well. But the question I
Hmm.
asked Daniel, as a kid, did you always know you wanted to be an actor?
No, absolutely not. No, 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 no. I mean, I come from a family of five kids, and we're all jokesters and ham it up, between ourselves, and hard to get a word in edgewise at the dinner table. That was my experience growing up, But I don't come from a theatrical family at all. None of my siblings, with the exception of my brother, really did that, and he just did a couple of plays in high school. But no, I didn't have aspirations. I was kind of a shy, awkward kid, and I didn't really feel that was my calling. My first calling, and still is very much a technical engineering kind of person. So this is way out. Now, I did kind of travel close to that because I've always been a musician. I took up brass in fourth grade, and I've been and I am currently a singer with a lot of training and experience. So I've sung in a number of different venues around town, different community choirs and church and this and that. So before I became an actor, which was only 4 years ago, I had frequently performed on stage, but only as a singer in a larger ensemble. So that was about as close of a tie-in as we can get.
Talk about the acting bug. So what got you to do this 4 years ago?
Oh my heavens. Well, at that time, a woman who became my friend, Pana, moved into our community, which is Westwood Co-housing in West Asheville, and she brought along her at the time 11-year-old daughter, Gaia, who, by the way, is currently in Beautiful Cages at the Magnetic, and she's
Oh,
a
by the way,
wonderful, wonderful actor.
she was great in it. It's a small role, but
Oh
she was
yeah,
fantastic. So I
yeah,
enjoyed that
yeah,
play.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's come a long way since I first met her. I mean,
Wow.
she was just a little kid when I met her, but she was going to art space school and studying theater. And at the invitation of her mom, I went to see her perform in Midsummer's Night Dream. They did a little production of it at Art Space, and I was watching all these very, very young actors killing Shakespeare. It was just amazing. It was really a lot of fun to watch. And so, I found that quite inspiring. And, Pana and I, we were friends by then, and we got to chat after the show, and I just kind of casually asked her, hey, how does one do this? Like, if I wanted to be an actor, what do you do? And she kind of, because she has an acting background also, she went to school for that. And so she said, well, if you want to get into this, first thing you need to do is look to see who's holding auditions. And so I went home after that, and I got online. I looked around auditions in Nashville, and sure enough, ACT was right in the middle of auditions for a show called The Groundling, and they had already completed the first day's edition. There was only one day left. And so Pana said, well, if you want to be smart about this, go down to the box office, borrow the script, read through as much of it as you can, and go in there, and throw your hat in the ring, right? So, funny story, The Groundling is a show written by a playwright who grew up on Long Island.
Oh,
His name
that's
is
right.
Mark.
Yeah.
His name is Mark Palmieri, and has become quite a successful playwright, and is a professor at Mercy College in New York City. And he wrote this play, which is set in Long Island. And as soon as I cracked the script and I was reading through this, I said, "Oh my God, I know every person in this play. I've had beers with them. I've worked with them. I've done this and that." I said, "Oh, this is the water I swam in for over 40 years." So I said, "Oh, this is very cool." So I went to the audition, and a few days later, Betsy Puckett, who was the director, called me up and offered me the male lead, this fellow named Bob Malone, and as I found out later on, after I'd left the audition, she just looked at the stage manager and said, "Oh, Bob Malone just walked through the door,"
Oh,
so I mean, it fit what her vision was perfectly,
I'm getting.
you know.
Let me just jump in here. I'm getting
Yeah,
chills to tell the story because I remember that was
yeah.
the first thing I saw you in too. So
Very
first thing you
first thing, yeah,
acted,
first thing I ever
and
did,
boy,
yeah.
did you kill that? Because I mean, and that, no, you did. I mean, and that was not a small part either. So
There was a lot of lines in that,
for your
but
first, yeah.
I was kind of like the dog that caught the car. Ponder said, "Hey, go out to an audition." So I get this offer. I said, "Oh golly, now what do I do?" And I didn't know anybody, and I was frank with everyone. I said, "Hey, you know what? Look, thank you for casting me. This is the first thing I ever did. I need some support." And everybody was just absolutely wonderful. The cast was just they did everything that they could to make me feel comfortable and help me get into my part, my character. It was just a gorgeous experience. I really enjoyed it.
But now I remember speaking to you after
Yeah.
I saw you in the show that day and went up on stage, and the
Hmm.
playwright was there that day, and we were
He
talking
was,
about
yeah.
Long
Yeah.
Island, and I didn't
Hmm.
realize that was your very first role. Was it tough for
Hmm.
you to memorize the part?
Um, it required it required a lot of work. It was not trivial. It was a lot of lines, and I had never done this before. But I had found an app for my iPhone called Line Learner, which
Right.
worked out really well for me. So I recorded it in all the lines, and I used that to drill what I had to do. And of course I ran lines with along the way. So yeah, it was a chore. It was a chore, but it was very satisfying, and I managed. I mean, there were probably a couple of nights where I may have dropped a line here or there, and there was two nights where one of the doors that I needed to make an exit out of on the set mysteriously was locked. And I did a Fred Flintstone, on the door, ad-libbed something to get off stage gracefully. That actually happened twice, and then the carpenter fixed the door, so it didn't happen anymore after that.
Well,
Either that or somebody was hazing me, one of the two.
the only problem I guess was you were there that night too when the
Yeah.
playwright was there too. So
Yes,
that's
yes, yes.
especially you had to
Yeah.
be perfect. But boy, I didn't realize first role and did you hit it? And we created, I won't say we created a monster, but then since then, I guess the bug had hit you,
Oh
and
my goodness, did it ever?
you
Yeah.
now, I don't know how many, have you even counted how many plays have you been in, ballpark?
I think by the time I'm done with the ones that I'm wrapped up in now, I'll be just shy of a dozen,
What?
about 11 different productions.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's pretty impressive in just a couple of years
Thanks.
for a guy
Yeah.
who never acted before. And the thing that's amazing, I think, Daniel, about you is that also we're not talking for the most part small parts. Some things may have been a small part, but I'll ask you to talk about another play. I think was my all-time favorite of yours that you did at Magnetic Theatre, and talk a little bit about that part.
Well, I assume you're talking about Paula Vogel's Indecent,
Yeah, right,
which was a magnificent, is a beautiful, beautiful play. Paula Vogel is a very, very well-known American playwright, and Indecent went up in New York City. It's gone up in major cities all over, and it's kind of a meta theatrical work. It's a play about a play. It's a play about a play, and it's a play about a theatrical troupe who had a successful run in the early part of the 20th century in the Yiddish theater in Central Europe. And it was kind of a controversial play. It had some controversial
right, yeah,
subject matter in it. And then a bunch of the folks emigrated to the United States, and they mounted the play in the Yiddish theater on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and was very successful there. And then somebody got the bright idea, hey, let's see if we can move this up to Broadway. And that's when all hell broke loose. And it was called Indecent because the play was cited as being an indecent work, and there were criminal charges. It was shut down. There's a whole big controversy about that. But the play intersects with the Jewish experience in the New World. It intersects with the Jewish experience in the Old World, and pogroms and the Holocaust and everything in between. And it's I find myself getting a little bit emotional because of the way that the storyline worked, and I'm remembering how we depicted, the experience that the troupe had after being rounded up by the Nazis, and it was very, very, very artfully played, and the way that the story was told was very artfully done. There was some literary license on the part of Paula Vogel, but she crafted a wonderful story that's inspired by something that actually happened. There was a lot of license, but it made for great theater, and it's my proudest moment on stage. I can't imagine that anything I will ever do will even come close to that.
Well,
It's
you
a
say that,
really
but
peak
again,
experience.
Daniel, it's just
Yeah.
kind of cool. Every time I see you in something,
Yeah.
I tell people I'm the worst critic because if I know somebody in a play, I'm going to like it. So if
Uh,
you're going to be in it, I'm going to like it. And so
oh,
I
thanks,
mean,
thanks,
I
buddy.
can just see you in just about every role you've been in. Before we talk about the current stuff, talk about some of the other plays you've been in over the last couple of years.
So, kind of during pandemic times, the Magnetic did a really interesting show that was written by a local playwright, and many of the things that you see in Magnetic are written by local
Right.
people. And this was a show that was penned by Tom Godleski, who
Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
workshopped it at the Magnetic. And those of you who may have seen his Christmas show Snowbound, have a feel for that. So Tom has a local bluegrass band called Buncombe Turnpike, and he wrote a bluegrass musical. It's called The Sparrow and the Whippoorwill, and it's a story about a very elderly World War II hero in a nursing home with a few secrets and with a desire to take care of some unfinished business. And he recruits his nurse to help him with these last things that he wants to do before he goes, to the beyond, as it were. And it had wonderful music in it, and I had a wonderful ensemble. Lauren Otis was my scene partner through most of that, and we had done a little bit of work together when I was an understudy for Sir John Falstaff and Henry IV, which was the previous year over at Montford. So I'd gotten to her and we worked together, but that was a wonderful cast. The Ows were in it. Mike
Right. Karen.
and Karen, and Dakota Mann was in that. And this and that. So it was nice, and we had live music on stage. It was a lovely experience, and it was interesting because I had to sing and act from a wheelchair, which is not all that easy to do, especially on a teeny tiny little stage like the Magnetic. There's a few times I got perilously close to the drop off in the front, had to make sure that I didn't have an accident. And singing from a wheelchair is a little bit difficult because you can't support as well as you can when you're standing. But managed to pull it off, and it was a very nice experience.
And I'm going to give you a compliment here too, in that as you
Thank you.
describe those roles, you kind of fit into each one, and as you're describing it, now I can remember seeing you in them, but they're all different, and you hit them all differently, and that, like you said, you played an old man in that role, and the Yiddish one, and just
Mhm.
I'm so impressed with your work in that you just fit into like every character it seems like, and that's
I've
cool.
had a lot of practice as a kid because I was a big Looney Tunes fan, and a lot of my friends were also. And I used to drive my teachers crazy by cutting up in class and mimicking lines from that. I'm a bit of a practiced mimic. I can do a lot of different voices and accents and characters and so forth. So, even knowing that back then, I wasn't really interested in acting until just a few years ago. But I guess those skills kind of helped out. I, I appreciate you telling me that. I have some versatility as a character actor. That's a very nice thing to know.
But no, it
You know, I
is.
did,
I'm saying as I see that you as a character actor, and
yeah.
each one you kind of really hit the role. Like I said, the old man. I can see it
Mhm.
now, but when I
Yeah.
was watching it, I didn't. I wasn't watching it and saying that's Daniel Sandoval. I was just saying,
Mm.
hey, that was an old man, and that's kind of a compliment because you weren't your usual self. You were fitting into the role. And that was
Yeah.
kind of cool that you
And
can do that.
and the old age makeup and the pajamas and a wheelchair will help to create the illusion. Yeah.
Let's fast forward then a little bit to the show you're currently rehearsing, and it'll
Okay.
be opening next week, Our Town.
Our
Um,
town. Yes, indeed.
talk a little bit about that.
Well, I saw the audition, go up for it, and I said, well, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. And at the time, I didn't know. At the time I didn't have as much of a nuanced idea of the show. I had actually kind of a very cursory idea of the show. I'd seen bits and pieces of it over the years, but I never really studied it in great detail. So of course, as soon as I saw the announcement, I went and did some research, and I'll be honest, I'm not above saying that I look at Spark Notes and Cliff Notes, to get the arc of a story I'd never read before. And I learned some interesting things about it. In the first place, it's one of the most successful American
Right.
plays in the American canon. Has been produced, unbelievably large in numbers of times
But
all
what's
over the world.
interesting,
You
Daniel,
know,
though,
yeah,
even though you said
yeah,
that, I
yeah.
don't. At least I've been in Asheville now like 15 years. It hasn't
Mhm.
been produced locally, that I know of.
Yeah, and it hasn't. And what's interesting is that it has a little bit of a reputation among some people as being, oh, this is something that you would see in a middle school or a high
Right,
school,
yeah.
or it's an old chestnut full of corny white bread sentimentality. And if that's the idea that you have about it, you're missing 99% of the play. Please don't be hung up on those stereotypes. Go and look at the play with fresh eyes, and do bring a package of Kleenex. It's a
Really?
transcendent story that could take place anywhere, and that's precisely the reason why Bob White, the new artistic director at ACT, and also the director of the show, chose to mount the production because it's something that can be adapted to Asheville. There's going to be, even though a lot of the dialogue points to turn of the 20th century New Hampshire. We're not doing New Hampshire accents. We're not dressing as early 20th century rustics. We're dressing as Ashevilleans,
Oh,
and that's exactly what Bob wanted us to do. The set, which some of you may already know, Thornton Wilder, the author of Our Town, deliberately did not want to put a lot of scenery onto the set. He didn't want to distract the audience's attention away from the action on the actor. So a lot of what we do is pantomime with imagined props. There's a few things, for instance, we have a couple of ladders that are used to kind of simulate people up on the second floor of their homes. We have things like that. But in spite of that, there's a lot of design in the production. And Asheville Community Theatre has an amazing design and construction department. The scenic designers and the carpenters and lighting and everything else. These are real professionals. That's all they do. And they actually were putting a lot of that together last night. We didn't have a rehearsal call last night, but we're going to have one tonight. I can't wait to see what they're going to put up there. But this is a polished design production. We figure, look, if we're gonna charge people good money to see a show, then they need to see a good show. They need to see good design. It's got to look. It's got to have some polish to it, and that's what Bob cares about a great deal, and has installed upon us.
Let me ask you, in terms of preparing for this, you said you read notes on it. Did you see the
Mhm.
movie at all?
Um, I saw bits and pieces of it. Typically, if I know I'm going to be in a production, I studiously avoid
Yeah.
watching films of other productions, because I want to. When what I try to do is to try to bring myself to the part. This is Daniel Sandoval being Dr. Gibbs, and so I do the things that I do. People recognize certain mannerisms and certain things like that. But I mean, to be successful at it, um, I can't rely on affectation, and I can't rely. I have to be myself, but myself playing a part. And so, if you look at how somebody else does it, you might pick up an accent. Like I'm very susceptible to accents. If I hear that, it kind of gets into me. If I see how somebody moves through a scene, I might subconsciously pick that up. And I didn't want that to affect my performance. I wanted to go in there with beginner's mind and allow myself to be directed by our director.
It'll
And
probably be
and
fun
and
though.
oh, it's
Afterward,
wonderful.
after
Yeah,
the show is over, it'll probably then be fun to see the movie. To
it
see
will. Yes,
afterward.
absolutely. Yeah,
But
yeah.
talk back to the movie itself. For the folks who don't know the story, or like me, read it, 30, 40 years ago,
Hmm.
Reader's Digest version of what the show is about.
Okay, so the show is about life. The show is it has a lot of things in it that will resonate heavily with Buddhist spirituality. It's To my knowledge, I don't believe that Thornton Wilder dabbled in Buddhist spirituality at all, there's a lot of things that will be familiar. It's the idea, and the takeaway is the importance of being here now, and it's the importance of valuing and savoring all the little bits and pieces of life, and it's about blooming where you're planted. It's about making the most out of your lot in life, and appreciating what you have. And if I give away too much more than
Okay,
that, it's
sure.
gonna spoil the story, and I don't want to do that.
No, but even as
But
you're
it,
describing it,
yeah,
I want to see it. It's just, which is
yeah.
really cool.
But it is something that can take place anywhere in the world at any moment in history in the world. It's something that is extremely moving. There'll be tears if you're paying attention. Bring a Kleenex. You may need it. And some people report having all kinds of different experiences, but this is a very atypical show. There's no razzle dazzle. There's no, great big, dramatic characters. It's about life, and it's a bit more subdued than a lot of theater experiences. But that's by intention. That was the writer's intention all along.
Appropriate for what age?
Anybody. It's
Okay.
uh, it's it's whistle clean.
No, but I mean,
Um, you
would
know.
young kids enjoy it, or what would you say, 10 or
Um,
older?
Probably. I think it would offer a rich opportunity for discussion. If you have a family and they have a bright young person that they want to bring to the show, by all means bring them and talk about it afterwards. I mean, not everybody is going to catch every nuance. I would think that the grown-ups are going to catch more of it because they've lived life longer, and some kids might scratch their head a little bit. But I mean, if you're if you're a thoughtful young person, you'll get something out of it. And if you have somebody to talk about it with, then even more so. And I guarantee you'll remember it for a very long time.
And so even if you're a thoughtful older person, I'll get something out of it as well.
You bet. You better believe it. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Talk about, Daniel, some of your castmates in the play as well.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I have a really bad memory for names, so please indulge me while I
Well,
bring up my
by the
cast
way,
list.
as you're looking this up, I love what you told me before we started taping. And that was how you remember people. You don't remember their names, you remember them by their characters.
That happens a lot. That's not an uncommon experience. I mean, I use that as an excuse because I'm naturally bad at remembering names. But if you want me to talk about my castmates, and top billing belongs to Ellie Murray, who plays the stage manager, which is a little bit of unconventional casting. Most of the time, the stage manager character is cast with a man, but Ellie is knocking it out of the park. And let me tell you something: this is a monster of a role. There's a lot of lines. Not only just a lot of lines, but there's these monstrous monologues. There's a monologue in the third act that stretches 2.5 pages,
Wow.
and I don't know how she does it. I honestly, I don't know how she does it, but I'm in awe every time I see her up there. Um, Corey Search, who I've never met before,
Yep.
plays Mrs. Gibbs. That's my stage wife. I'm Dr. Gibbs in the show. Um, Jaden Parton plays George
Oh,
Gibbs, my son, and I bet a lot of people that tune into your podcast know Jaden from Montfort Park. He's done
Monster
a lot
Park,
of
sure.
work up there, and he's a lovely, talented young person, who plays George Gibbs. Let me see. Another name that I'm sure is familiar to people is Pascal Lacourt. He does a lot of work up at SART. He was
Right.
just in Milestones. Boy, my Freudian slip is showing there. Milestones. Milestones. Let me see. We have Laura Walton, who was in an ensemble with me back in April at Biltmore Church. It was devised a work called No More Waiting. That was done by Magnetic Theater. Mark Lieberman, who I'm sure you know Mark Lieberman.
Sure.
You know,
Just had,
for
yeah,
yeah,
just met him for breakfast the other day. We were
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He plays Howie Newsom, the milkman. I jokingly refer to him as Tevye when I talk to him. And we have some lovely young people. Ruth Chappell, a young lady, plays my daughter Rebecca. Lily Nilo is a wonderful Emily Webb, who's the female protagonist in the play. George is the other. So they a lot of the story focuses on the arc of their life. Let me see, who else do we have? We have a number of newcomers that were where I was 4 years ago. We have Daniel Canaday. We have Tom Trauger. We have Ilza Zagaris and Cara Pace and Everett Legat, who's another lovely young person who does some work in the high school theater scene. And let me just make sure that I did not forget anyone. Oh yes, Catherine Gabe, and Megan Marcello.
Well,
Yeah,
Daniel,
that's our crew.
it's going through the cast. That's, pretty large sized cast for a show.
It is, yeah,
One
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
other things I like about ACT is that they constantly try to bring in established people who have been in shows, but as you're
Mhm,
mentioning this list, half those people, if not more, I've never seen or heard. So that's kind
mhm,
of fun to see new
mhm.
people in, play as well. So you don't see the same old.
Yeah, it is, and I'm very grateful for the break that they gave me. I was a complete unknown with zero experience, and yet they took a chance on me, which I'm very grateful for.
Now, this show, Our Town, opens. Give me the dates of the run again, if you would.
Okay, so this is important, folks. Pay attention if you want to see this. So it opens on September 30th, which is a Friday, and it runs for only 9 shows. So we do shows on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's a Sunday matinee at 4. And then the Friday and Saturday shows are at 7:30. So you only have 3 weekends to enjoy it. So order your tickets right away. There's not a bad seat in the house for this production.
I'm good. You reminded me. So I was thinking 2 o'clock on Sunday. So the Sundays start at 4 o'clock. Is that correct?
Oh, you
Is
know
it?
something?
Check.
You know something? I hope I didn't
We better
misstep
check
there.
it. I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
Magnetic is the 4 o'clock start.
Okay.
ACT,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's 2 or 2:30. We'll check it. But
Yeah.
for folks to
Yeah.
check
Yeah.
it,
I'm gonna double check that. But absolutely check things. And I want to make another note too is that parking downtown can be a bit of a hassle. And
right?
so what I recommend doing is to use the Asheville City Car Park on College Street. It's right across the street from Pack Square Park.
Good advice.
And
Yeah.
it's a short walk to the theater. It's just a couple of blocks, and the parking's cheap. I mean, for the duration of the show, you're going to spend maybe $4, maybe $5. and it's quick and easy. Pull into the garage, park your car, walk to the theater, and that's it. If you try to park near the theater, that's a challenge, and it probably won't end well. So
And if you
use the
would,
car park.
too, before we get off our town, just mention too, if you would, Daniel, the website to get the tickets and information.
Yes, of course. First, I'm going to mention where the theater is, which is on 35 Walnut Street. That's right in the heart of downtown. You can find it on the map easily enough. But 35 Walnut Street, and the website URL is ashevilletheater.org. So
And by the way,
www.
how do you spell theater? Which way?
That's a very good question. And it's spelled theatry. Okay, so they put the R before the E at the end. Okay, so it's Asheville Theater. Last three letters are TRE, in that order, .org.
Okay, so check the website if you want to get tickets, other information about the show, and as Daniel was mentioning, parking can be tough, but also we've come downtown, a lot of great places to eat around there too.
Yes.
Spend a night or afternoon. We always go, Daniel, on a Sunday afternoon and go out for dinner right afterwards. It's a lovely way to spend the day.
There's a lot of choices, yeah.
Okay, talk about the fact then, so after this completes its run, you go right into another show at ACT, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm going to be in Elf, the musical, and
Which I don't know.
you want to, I feel like Monty Python now for something completely different. Lord have mercy, it is. I'm going to be cast as a fake Santa. If you know the show, I mean, it's based very much on the movie, but I play the part of the grimy, salty, heavily New York accented fake Santa in a department store, who gets outed as an imposter and beat up by the elves. It's a very funny thing. But so that's what I'm doing next at ACT. But I've got something in between, which is a couple of small one acts. Well, that's kind of
Right.
repetitive. It's a couple of one acts at the Magnetic Theater one act play festival, which is definitely a lot of fun. I did a one act on video during the pandemic time, but this one's going to be live, and I'm in a short subject called The Audition, and I'm in another one called Just Desserts, which takes place in a corporate employee cafeteria, and it's got some dark angles to it. So go see that. It's a very dark comedy.
Do you know ballpark when those are running? The ones at Magnetic?
That'll be happening in the first and second weeks of November.
As Daniel said, just a fun way to see. I really enjoy them. As Daniel said, a series of one-act plays. They usually do them over 2 nights because they have so many. And you want to see some of the top Asheville talent. This is a place to see it. So just
there's a lot of good folks doing that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
By the way, is that tough for you, Daniel? So you're doing Our Town, then you're doing Elf, then you're doing one-act plays. Does that all jumble together for you?
No, it doesn't.
Amazing.
I hope it doesn't. I mean, I'm not in the thick of it yet. I'll let you know in a couple of weeks. But I mean, I think I can keep it separate. And it is a little bit crazy. And it's funny. I was feeling really left out of things earlier in the year because I had a massive dry spell. Prior to this deluge, I was in a devised work that went up for one performance back in April. And I had been hoping to be cast in a bunch of other things. I went out for a lot of auditions, and I didn't get a bite until late summer. And then the floodgates opened up. Everything happened at once, and so I wound up getting in our town. I get a call out of the blue from one of my scene mates from Indecent, who's directing the one acts, and so he invited me in. I got cast in Elf, and I'm also doing a little fundraiser in between for.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So if you're around theater at all in Montford, you've seen Kai Strange a million times. He's been in every show this season. And he's just a brilliant young actor. And Kai is having a fundraiser to raise money for some gender affirming surgery, and he's completely open about this. In fact, he was on a previous podcast. And so, I'd had the idea to maybe we can have like a karaoke night. I was just throwing things out there because I'm a sound engineer. That's one of the hobbies that I do. I have a whole bunch of professional sound equipment, and I sometimes help folks out in various ways with it. And so I said, hey, I'll bring my gear down. We'll set up. We'll have a little karaoke kind of fun thing. And then, Barbie Angel kind of got involved in this in parallel. She's a great organizer and a great MC, and is much more plugged into all the entertainment things than I am. And so she kind of took that and ran with it, and it's been kind of the chief organizer of this system. But basically, the idea is to have a variety show, and it is going to be quite a variety of acts, and with a pay-as-you-can admission, and to raise some money for a very, very talented young person to become his best self. And I was in No More Waiting with Kai. It was the first time I got to know him, and he's just been a delightful theater colleague. So I'll be running sound for that event. I'll be behind the soundboard.
Do you remember the date on that?
Yes, it's Wednesday, October 5th.
Okay.
At 7:30 at the Hazel Robinson Amphitheater, Montford Park.
Again,
site.
you mentioned on behalf of Kai, I've had the pleasure to get to know him a little bit as well. I don't know, did you get to see Three Musketeers yet?
I unfortunately missed that, but I saw a bunch of the other stuff at Montford this year.
He killed it, and Kai.
Oh, I saw his costume. Yeah. King
Right.
Louis Kelka shows.
So he was just great in that. So Daniel, so after we get through this spell, down the road, do you have anything? I'll ask you two questions. One, do you have anything else planned beyond what we've talked about?
No, not planned. I don't. No.
Okay. And aside from not planned, let me ask you this: do you have, if there was a dream role for you, do you have anything you've always wanted to be in or play?
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, there's not a lot of dream roles left for men my age. So if I had to pick one, it would probably be Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. But I imagine Topol was quite a bit younger than I am now when he made the movie, and so was Zero Mostel. I mean, but really at this point it doesn't matter. I'm just grateful to have an opportunity to act in anything here and there, and I don't think a lot about dream roles. I mean, there's a lot of shows that I really like. For instance, I love Hair. My elder siblings saw it and brought back the soundtrack, and as a kid I used to listen to it, and I can belt out Flesh Failures, but the effect would be a little bit ridiculous because I'm old enough to be Claude's grandfather, so that totally would not work on stage. But I love the music and I love singing it. But yeah,
that's another show not too many people have done. One theater group did it, I think, but you don't see that too often. Hair.
Yeah, I don't know if it didn't really age all that well.
I was going to say that.
It's very topical, So somebody could probably do some clever adaptations with it, and it is good theater, But it helps to know the zeitgeist and the history at the time to get the most out of it.
Daniel Sandoval, if somebody wants to get in touch with you or keep track of you or find out more information about you, what's the best bet?
I'm on Facebook. You can look me up that way. I mean, I have email, but the easiest way to do it would just be to send me a private message on Facebook, and other than that, show up at theater and hope, and say hello after the show. If you're going to see a show that I'm in, I always love to meet the audience afterward, and I'll stick around for a little bit.
Okay. Well,
by all means, say hi.
I'd like to thank you, Daniel, for being my guest on this week's Blaine's World podcast, as well as to Cappy Tassetti, my producer. Look forward to having you join me on each podcast, which you'll find, like I said, on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, BlainesWorld.net, my website. You'll find us if you look for us. Daniel, it was always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you in our town, among other things. See you soon,
Thank you. And Blaine, thanks so much for everything you do for the theater community. We appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure, buddy.